Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar in the series Fish Waste for Profit. And we're really going to focus today on fish skin and this wonderful resource. So I'm really excited to tell you all about the full utilization of seafood work that we're involved in at the Iceland Ocean Cluster in Reykjavik in Iceland, and part of our big program, which is called 100% Fish, which is using every part of the fish to create value. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from today's speakers as well that are creating great value from fish skins. Before we start, I have a couple of housekeeping points that hopefully will be useful for everyone interacting with the webinar and the chat rooms. So I'm going to talk to you first about the public chat function. So this is available to use throughout the session, which is to welcome delegates to make introductions and comments. But please don't use this chat function to ask questions. Then we have a private chat function. So if you have any issues or any comments for the host, please use the private section of the chat function. So this will allow you to send private messages to specific people. Admins for that session then will be listed there so you can find them. In terms of Q&A and question and answer, you'll see another tab that's called Q&A. So we'll give you the opportunity for delegates to ask questions to the panel at the end of this session, and Dr. Thor Sigurðsson will be moderating that panel. And this feature is found next to the chat function. So please type any questions in this Q&A box throughout the event, and then Thor will read them out at the end and we'll discuss them as a group. And if you are directing your question to a specific speaker, please do provide that speaker's name in your question so we can direct it properly. For those of you using mobile phones or tablets, please note that the chat function, it may be hidden, and you can access this by clicking on the little blue speech bubble icon, which you should see there. And just for those of you that are interested to know, and so everyone is aware, we will be recording the session and it will be sent out to the attendees registered for the conference afterwards. So without further ado, I'll quickly introduce myself. So my name is Dr. Alexandra Lipa. I'm the Head of Research and Innovation at the Iceland Ocean Cluster. And here we're today talking about the wonderful material, which is fish skin. And just to kind of break down what that actually is, so we're all on the same page to start with. Fish skin is both the skin itself and also the scales in many species as well. And this is a material that's full of protein, it's full of lipids or fats, and also it is a structural material with lots of potential function. But if we think about how much of every fish is skin, that's about 3 to 8% of every single fish that has skin and scales. That's how much we're looking at. And if you think about the fact that we waste about 10 million metric tons of seafood at the moment that's going to landfill globally, this is a huge amount of biomass, which is really very much an untapped resource. Like I said, it's high in protein, it's high in fats, and it has lots of potential function and value as a material as well. And we're going to hear more about that today. And I really wanted to talk to you about some of the ways in which the Iceland Ocean Cluster is creating value from fish skin through many of the innovative companies that work both within our cluster and in Iceland. And to give you an example of how do those kind of ideas emerge and the stories behind them. So one company that started in the Iceland Ocean Cluster is called Codland. And Codland was really a group of people coming together and asking the question, okay, at the moment we're throwing away all these parts of the fish. We're only eating the fillet. There's the skin, the heads, the frames, everything else, which is currently just being wasted. And they were really asking the question, okay, well, how can we make value from this? How can we create a value from this material that we're currently wasting? And in Iceland, there's a really good connection between the entrepreneurial community and the research community. And the idea really arose that what could be done is that the fish skin itself, in this case, it's from the Atlantic cod. This is this important emblematic species in Iceland. That the skin of the Atlantic cod, this could be used to extract from it collagen and gelatin. And this is really interesting because collagen is a structural protein. You see it in many products sold over the counter. So we know that when we ingest collagen, not only does it provide us with dietary protein, but it's actually really healthy for our joints. And this idea, this taking the collagen from the fish skin that we used to throw away, it really captured the imagination of the fisheries sector in Iceland. And in fact, this idea was invested in by 4 of the biggest fisheries companies in Iceland. And they have built then a company called Marine Collagen Iceland, which is taking fish skin from whitefish like Atlantic cod and haddock and extracting from it this collagen powder. And this powder then has a value. So it's not just something that was thrown away to landfill, it's now something that's worth $20 per kilogram. And it can be used in lots of different things. So for example, one of the things that it's used in is in high-end nutraceuticals. So in powders that have been purified and mixed with other things like amino acids to be put into smoothies or into drinks. And they're really adding not only economic value and really pushing up that revenue from that material, but also they're having a functional and social value. And this company that I'm mentioning here, Feel Iceland, they even use some of this marine collagen in some of their skin cleansing products, because we know that there is some evidence that collagen, when it's on the skin, traps moisture. So this can be quite good for the skin as well. And what's really interesting also that their collagen from fish skin has entered the mainstream market. And it's even used in soft drinks and energy drinks, which are then sold en masse, giving both energy but also protein value in the drink as well. And we're going to hear some examples of this today as well, I know, from some of our other speakers. And in Iceland also, there's the biggest fish skin tannery in the world that's taking fish skin from many different species and processing it into leather. And this is really creating a useful functional textile that's used in many different fashion products. For example, this fish skin tannery even has a contract with Gucci, which is super interesting. And even just in its tanned form, it's raising about $50 per kilogram. And then just really at the very extreme example of great value that can be created from fish skin, both social and economic value, is companies like Kerecis in Iceland, which is one of 2 unicorns in the country. And what they're doing is taking the skin of specially selected Atlantic cod and processing it and cleaning it into a wound dressing that is particularly targeted at burns and diabetic sores. And this is actually an FDA-approved product. It's used and sold in the US, particularly, for example, to the military, but also in hospitals in the US and in Iceland. So this is a really good example of how you can go from something that once was thrown out and wasted to something with huge amounts of value. And we can kind of think about this as a value pyramid. So going from maybe a lower hanging fruit of using the raw material, the skin, for something fairly simple but very useful that creates some value, all the way to things like Kerecis that uses Atlantic cod skin for something with high economic value, as well as really important biomedical social value. And of course, this has been the focus in Iceland in and around whitefish, because that's a lot of what the fisheries have been built on. But increasingly, we have a growing Atlantic salmon sector in Iceland, particularly with farming in the sea and on land. So the model of using 100% of the fish and the fish skin doesn't stop at whitefish. There's also products coming from, for example, using the fats and the fatty acids from the salmon skin, using the salmon skin for leather, and even companies that are using the enzyme from the gut of the salmon to break down the proteins in the skin of salmon into the building blocks of peptides and amino acids, so they can be that quick release nutrition and easily accessible nutrition. So this is teaching us a lot about what can be done with other species and how fish skin can have huge amounts of value from lots of different species. And it's really exciting now that we're able to extend this to other species, to other countries, and we've got the opportunity at the moment to work with, for example, the Great Lakes and the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Governors and Premiers Group, where the Great Lake whitefish is being explored for the same kind of potential. This is one of the most important commercial freshwater fish in North America, and it's been sent to Iceland, and we've been looking at this fish's skin to see, okay, based on this Icelandic model, what might we do with this fish skin? And of course, this is working with the research community here and also important processing companies like Marel and Kjørge. And what we've been able to see is that the skin and the scales of this fish can be used in the same way that we've seen for Atlantic cod and for haddock to produce collagen, both from the scales and from the skin. So we can see lots of different potential values in this, which is really interesting. And then we can see what might it mean for the market in the US and in Canada. And likewise, we've been able to collect some of the skin from these fish that were sent to us, working with Nordic Fish Leather, which is the fish tanning company in Iceland. We're looking to see, how does this material work, this fish species from this location work in terms of tanning and leather production to go into all kinds of different applications, be it fashion or be it other material use. So this is a really exciting time where we're seeing that we can use this 100% fish model from Iceland to really fuel both knowledge transfer and innovation growth in and around fish skin. So it's really exciting times. And I really look forward to hearing from the other speakers as well, who I know are doing great things. And I'm really looking forward to any questions at the end of the session that will be moderated by Thor. So thank you very much for your time. I think I'll pass it over to Thor now, who will introduce our upcoming speakers.
Thank you, Alexandra. Great to be with you all. We have two great speakers with us today. We'll start with Sarah Eriksson, who's the owner of Alaskins. I've never actually met Sarah, but I've been following you for quite a while, and I'm quite excited to see what you guys are up to. Alaskin made of 100% with Alaskan fish skin. It says here it's salmon, halibut, and cod, which is quite interesting for all of us to have this combination of opportunities. Nothing else is added to these crunchy and healthy dog treats, just naturally filled with vitamins, packed with proteins and fish oils. The fish skin comes from Alaskan commercial fishermen, cats who are sustainably harvesting wild Alaskan seafood. Sarah, the floor is yours.
There we go. Okay, can you see me? Am I all good? I'm assuming you can. Well, good morning from Alaska. My name is Sarah Eriksson, and I am thrilled to be here to tell you about my company and what I've been doing. This idea of fish skins and using the waste of fish really came as a little girl for me. I grew up commercial fishing in Alaska with my family, and it was kind of alarming to see how much of the fish was being thrown away. And my father taught us, it talked about how all of that nutrition was in the waste, and it really impacted me as a little girl. And so I knew I always wanted to do something with that. It wasn't until a few years ago that I started Alaskins and started actually working with fish skins to make dog treats. So I think the best way, though, to kind of introduce you to Alaskins and what I am doing is to show you this video that I have put together for a campaign fundraiser that I'm doing right now for Alaskins. But it really gives you a great introduction to my company and what I'm doing. So I think I'm just going to push play, and then I'll continue after this.
Alaskans have special relationships with their dogs. Dogs just aren't our pets, they're our co-workers, protectors, and our inspiration. Whether they are our daily companions or part of our working dog sled team, our dogs deserve the very best when it comes to nutrition. Hi, I'm Sarah Eriksson, the owner and founder of Alaskins. Alaskins Dog Treats has found the best source of natural nutrition right here in the heart of Alaska's fishing industry. Alaskins collects the normally discarded fish skins from the processing plants and turns them into great tasting and very likely the most nutritious dog treats on the market. Alaskins is an Alaskan female-owned business located here on the beautiful Kenai Peninsula. I was born in Alaska and I grew up in a commercial fishing family. I remember my father commenting on how nutritious those fish skins were and what a waste it was for them to be thrown away by the processing plants. I was taught to appreciate all of nature's bounty, as it is our responsibility to use every part of that gift. Since I was a little girl, I knew I wanted to help create something special for our pets from the wasted fish skins, and in 2016, I began making Alaskans dog treats. Since then, we've started to catch on with dog owners, and in 2019, it became my full-time mission with one purpose: to provide dogs all over the world with fabulous dog treats using those beautiful and healthy fish skins. And we're the first to create dog treats from 3 of Alaska's most famous fish: Alaska salmon, halibut, and cod. I believe people should choose Alaskans for 4 reasons. First, we only use wild-caught fish. Fish that are harvested from their natural habitat are by far the healthiest fish to eat. Farm fish can be filled with toxins, so always choose wild when you're looking for a healthy fish. Second, there's nothing else added to our dog treats. It's a single ingredient using only Alaska fish skins, which are then transformed into a crunchy, super yummy, and healthy treat. Third, the nutritional benefits are almost endless. They're packed with protein, vitamin B12, vitamin D, vitamin A, potassium, and tons of omega-3s. Alaskans are a force multiplier when it comes to your dog's health. Shinier coat, stronger bones, healthier skin, and the overall health of your pet just gets a boost when they snack on Alaskans. And finally, we support a zero-waste culture by keeping a huge amount of wasted fish skins out of the local landfills and our oceans, and instead turning them into amazing, healthy pet treats. In the United States, people love their dogs so much that we spend $5.6 billion just on dog treats every year. Billions more are spent on vitamins that naturally occur in our pet treats. Alaskan pet treats can help fill the demand for better nutrition with our healthy single ingredient treats. So please consider an investment in Alaskans today to help make our pets healthier, happier, and ultimately live longer. Your dog will thank you, the Alaskans crew thanks you, and I thank you.
So that's our video that we did, but I think it's just a great introduction of who we are, what Alaskans does. You can see on this first slide that we make a variety of treats. Our canned, we take the extra meat from the halibut and we can that. We're going to start doing that with our salmon line as well. We do a CBD dog treats with our halibut and cod. But we make either hand rolled or whole skin dog treats out of our fish skins. And again, I was born in Alaska, and my father was a school teacher. We commercial fished in the summer. That's me in the middle. And then this is on Naknek River here in Bristol Bay. And then obviously fish has been part of my life, all of my life. And I just am thrilled with living in Alaska. Our Alaska seafood is just premium, and it's just always been a passion of mine. And certainly using the fish skins is a priority for me. But who are we, Alaskans? We are a premium dog treat company. We are proud to say it's a single ingredient treat. We use salmon, halibut, and cod skins. I chose those skins not only because they're bountiful in Alaska. There are 3 main commercial fishing fish that we fish for, but the skins hold up really well for dog treats. And I like working with those skins. So I stick with those 3. I've kind of tried some others. They didn't work as well. So those 3 fish I stick with, but it's Alaska owned. I choose to stay in Alaska. It's female owned. It's me. And we're located here on the Kenai Peninsula. So if you're looking at the map of Alaska, if you can find Anchorage, it's South Central Alaska, the panhandle that connects to Canada, and then the Aleutian Islands. We're in the center of that. And we are really committed into turning Alaska's fish waste into a valued added product. We try to use all of the fish. Again, we don't add anything else to our fish skins. It's just the skin. We do try to leave as much meat on as we can on the fish. This is a salmon skin. You can see some of that meat is still left on there, but it's just a real hearty treat for the dog, either whole or the hand rolled there. And the zero waste culture, really started with me again as a young girl, just realizing the amount of waste that we throw away that we could use into something very nutritious. And my thought was to use it for pets, and I just feel like there's really nothing better, not a better or more nutritious treat for a dog. And we've really done a great job in turning that, figuring out how to use these fish skins into a dog treat, and really proud of Alaskans and what we've accomplished. And our mission really is to keep using all of the waste of the fish and come up with more ways to make dogs happy and cats. Again, they're just packed full of vitamins, naturally occurring in these dog treats. You get all of these proteins and vitamins and omega-3s. Again, over $10 billion is spent every year just in the United States alone on dog treats and on vitamins. So $5.6 billion on dog treats, and then Americans spend another $5 billion on vitamins to give to their dogs. All of those vitamins naturally occur in our pet treats. So that $10.6 billion annual industry, we just feel like Alaskans could certainly capture part of that market at least, and make a lot of dogs happy and dog owners. But this next slide is important, I think, because Alaska exports 3 billion pounds of seafood every year. So just imagine the waste that naturally comes from that fish is enormous. We are throwing away, so much waste. That's almost an endless supply that we could use to make something great from that, what was once considered waste. So my supply is there like forever. As long as we have a commercial fishing industry, as long as we're catching fish, there's always waste that's being thrown away. I want to capture that waste and use it to make, right now I'm doing dog treats, and we're doing a canned cat food for dogs and cats, but the canned halibut, the canned salmon, that's just all the extra meat that comes off those fish skins. There's so much more that I want to do that I'm excited about. It's just about having money and growth to do it. So, but really the amount of waste is enormous. And I think the supply is almost endless. Alaskans hopefully will catch on soon to it. It's what a vital resource it can be for our state, and export, just the input it can have and the impact on our state. This next slide is just our projected growth. We started really 2017, and then in 2020 I went full-time, quit all my other work. And so you can see we've grown quite a bit. It's about 33% over every year. Although I think this is a pretty modest projection, because we're certainly not in a saturated market. There is definitely room for improvement and growth. And so this is just kind of what we're doing. But dogs all over really love Alaskans. When I just started testing this in my kitchen in the house, now we're into our second manufacturing plant. Dogs love Alaskans. They love that fish taste and the smell and all of it. People ask, do dog treats smell fishy? I'm like, yeah, it's fish, so it's definitely a smell that dogs love, but it's such a great benefit for them, and it'll really help your dog live a lot longer and be a lot healthier. So if you have any questions, obviously you can ask after this webinar, but here's my contact information. So feel free to write it down, my email. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, but that's really it. So hopefully I explained to you a little bit about what Alaskans is, and I'm thankful for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. Super inspiring. So glad to finally meet you, even though it's only on the web. But I definitely think you're onto something that could be, of course, duplicated, and really, I think people are really inspired to see what you're doing. It's really important. Next is Tasha Nathanson, the founder, CEO, and lady boss of 7 League Leather, a circular economy fish leather tannery, a fish leather boots startup. 7 Leagues will sell wholesale fish leather to the global market and boots to North Americans, addressing the growing demand for eco-conscious, ethically produced materials. 7 Leagues works with indigenous partners and urban job seekers and uses only skins of responsible wild cats that are a byproduct of food processing. The business model is designed to be replicable, bringing this mix of future-focused eco-development and social hiring where it is needed. Tasha, great to meet you. The floor is yours.
Sorry about that. Good morning, at least where I am. I'm Tasha Nathanson of 7 Leagues Leather. We make in luxury wholesale fish leather and fish leather goods upcycled from waste in the fisheries and in forestry. Our startup is located in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. We're currently pre-sales, but we are gearing up for 2023. So we're here to talk about solutions to fish waste, but I want to highlight that the most effective way of doing this is also addressing intersecting challenges and sectors simultaneously. I'll be touching on where this has and hasn't worked so far for 7 Leagues. So fish waste is a problem. That's what we're here to talk about. A fish fillet only takes up about half of the fish. Not only is the other half often wasted material, it's lost economic value and lost potential positive impact on the people and the communities that could use it. In 2015, humans globally consumed 150 million tons of filleted fish, equivalent to 6 million tons of wasted skins. So this could be made into fish leather to feed the growing high-value, sustainable fashion market, people and companies who are buying sustainable textiles and biomaterials. Leather is a beautiful high-value use for wasted skins from many animals in the food chain, but leather also has problems. Most leather today is made using chrome, which is putting the industry under the spotlight for bad practices. Vegan leather is no solution because most depend on fossil-based binders. They're also lower quality and they contribute to the plastic pollution problem. And it leaves the skins and hides wasted because they still exist as a byproduct of food processing. So fashion also has its problems. Ethical fashion is rising against this and is predicted to grow. We aim to be part of that. So we make fish leather using tannins, which are plant compounds. This makes a thicker, higher quality leather. The basis of this kind of tanning has been around for about the past 2,000 years, though there is continual innovation and improvement in the process. This is where the word tanning for leather comes from. As a bonus, the tannins themselves are also naturally antimicrobial and antifungal, which is the job that they do for the plants that produces them. Our proprietary process is developed in consultation with an experienced Icelandic fish tanner, Gunstein Bjornsson, bringing together the most modern industrial standards for leather production with experience in fish leather tanning. We use no toxic chemicals in our process, and we've designed a waste recapture system for circular water use. And we're partnering with First Nations in fisheries and forestry to ensure that our enterprise is solidly placed to navigate the changes in fish and forest tenure while ensuring that our progress is fair, equitable, and inclusive. Fish leather is part of a large global leather industry that has multiple applications. It's an eco-niche luxury product. Fish leather has 9 times higher tensile strength per thickness than mammal leather because of the crisscross structure of fish skin, which is in contrast to the parallel structure in mammal skin. So this makes a thin, flexible, durable skin with high tensile strength and a beautiful scale pattern. These pictures are all examples of other tanneries' fish leather. We have a few differences in ours. So we will be the only fish leather tannery in Canada so far. We will be the only tannery working with wild Pacific fish species. We use only the skins from sustainable wild catch processed for food rather than farmed fish. By purchasing waste for high-value uses, our business model adds value and therefore increases the resiliency of sustainable fisheries and coastal communities. We're working in partnership with First Nations, doing veg tanning rather than chrome tanning. We're also using biodegradable coatings rather than the acrylic that often gets used on fish leather. I super do not understand taking a beautiful natural biotextile and then covering it in plastic. Because we're blazing a new trail here, particularly for our part of the world, I cannot yet reveal the details, but we're cooking up a really exciting apprenticeship program. We're already talking to potential partners for this new direction, partners who are seeking skills training and sustainable ecological jobs for their members for the economy ahead. So our leather will be different from what's already on the market because it's designed to be both ecologically and socially sustainable, and very much a product of the Pacific Northwest. So I've discovered a few roadblocks to developing this value chain. One resides in our government bureaucracy. Already in Canada, it's a bit funny to work with fish, with salmon in particular, because inland fish are provincial, but ocean fish are federal, which means that migrating salmon change jurisdiction as they swim. So regulations pertaining to fish processing also vary jurisdiction to jurisdiction, depending on whether the fish will be sold only locally, at which point they are provincially controlled, or farther afield, at which point they have federal regulations. So it makes for a very opaque regulatory system and unclear access and influence points at times. In British Columbia, fisheries and aquaculture resides within the agriculture and seafood portfolio, which define their mandate as only regarding food products, as in if it isn't food, they don't deem it to be agriculture. So this means I can't access startup support programs from the agriculture area because I'm not making food, even though I'm working with waste from food processing. Regulations on fish processing are also only related to food safety, not related to waste reduction or reuse in any other realm. In fact, there is no policy against fish waste in Canada. It isn't even tracked, it isn't measured, nor is anyone looking at where it goes or what better use it might be put to. I'm happy to report that Canada's Ocean Supercluster has identified waste reduction and value add in fish processing as one of their strategic goals. I'm also happy that they've recently established a new presence on the West Coast, as they were previously only on the East Coast. I hope this bodes well. However, we really need government on board too to incentivize change in the use of waste in fisheries. So the other thing is that people need to want to try something new. Thor, in his book, mentions that it is often even harder to get traditional industries to imagine and welcome change. I've found that small fish processors and family-owned companies are much more open to working with Seven Leagues. Larger processors already have their established ways of doing things, and they are much less inclined to modify their process in order to keep the skins whole and separate these from the rest of the fish waste and keep them from rotting, even though this is for a price. I'm definitely willing to pay. Without being held accountable through policy incentives for the impact of wasting half of the fish, they are largely happier to keep on doing what they're already doing. First Nations folks, on the other hand, are quite interested in using the whole fish, as this aligns with their values. So as more nations are able to negotiate greater participation in fisheries regulations in their territorial waters, and as they open their own fish processing facilities, this should also benefit our business. I had to laugh when we're talking about siloed thinking. I was in a recent interview for a Blue Economy program, and I was actually asked the question, I know your product is made from fish skin, but can you explain to us why this is an ocean business? We really have to do better than this. I want to give a shout out to where multi-solving and cross-sectoral innovation is working for us. The forestry sector has actually been much quicker to see the potential for using their byproduct to make leather. This is true in both government and industry. When I set out to develop this company, one of the things that I needed to source was tannin. I was chagrined to discover that my only choice was to import tannins. Importing tree products to British Columbia is a bit like importing sand to the Sahara. It doesn't really make sense. So I turned to the forestry sector to find out if they could help. I shared my market research with them on the growth in the veg tanning segment of leather production, and the Ministry of Forests, and most particularly the iBio, was very quick to respond, even though I came from outside the forest sector and they had never thought about leather, much less fish leather. They introduced me to Forest Products Innovation, who are now developing an Indigenous-run tannin production project, and they are hosting my facility at my tannery at their facility. So they're truly supportive partners, and I think the fishing sector could learn a lot from how the forestry sector has been more open and flexible in their response. The problems facing the world right now are complicated, and they're interconnected, and they're systemic. So our solutions need to be creative and collaborative to be truly effective. 7 Leagues Leather is taking fish skin as an entry point to imagine a brighter, more regenerative future, and to begin building it in symbiosis with the communities around us. I thank you for your time. I would love it if you signed up for our newsletter. We only put out one each season, so we don't clutter up your your inbox, but we can give you some interesting information as we march towards actually launching. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Tessa. Once again, super inspiring for all of us to listen to what you're up to, but also I think it's quite interesting to listen to the challenges that you have, because this is very, very much in line with what we have realized in Iceland as well. Many European regulations tend to look at seafood byproducts, seafood side streams as waste, and due to that, it has been really hard for us to tell even regulators that this is actually a super good product filled with nutrients, proteins, etc. But we're sort of stuck with regulations that are just aiming at telling us that this is of no use. So in the circular economy, this is really hard.
It's crazy. I actually had gotten a proposal submitted to some grad students at the University of British Columbia to start taking a look at and even measuring fish waste, because we don't even look at it, but I needed to get some funding for it. And I couldn't find anyone who would fund a couple of grad students to take a look at fish waste. And the response that I got from government officials and other organizations was that they didn't see that there was a problem here. And so they weren't even willing to count it.
Tasha, I promise you our time is just coming. It's just a matter of waiting a little bit, pressing on, and things will happen. I must tell you now, one thing that we just were informed about yesterday in the Icelandic news is that the company Kerecis, which is doing the medical skin graft that Alexandra told us about, they just hired their employee number 500, just doing medical skin grafting, which just shows us the opportunity. Suddenly we can say in Iceland that we probably have 600 to 700 people that are somehow working in the skin business in Iceland. And for a small island like ours, of course, many of them are working outside of Iceland, but at least it shows us the opportunity. I must also show you one of our pride now, because I know some of the people from Great Lakes are with us. This is the collagen that we're making from the whitefish lake from Great Lakes. And it just looks astonishing to have the studies done now and seeing that there is this potential to do all these things with the fish skin, with our friends in the Great Lakes and all around, of course. Bunch of questions coming up. So if I start with Sarah, maybe. You show quite an impressive list of, impressive growth plans. Do you need more technology to do that, or is it becoming more efficient, this process? Are you planning to invest in some technology to make this leap?
Mainly freezer space. So I need, a couple large walk-in freezers. If I had more space to store fish, the great thing about fish skins is that I can use it all year round because I get it from the processing plant. So in Alaska, we can't even use the fish waste or sell it for profit. You have to go through a commercial fishery, buy it from them, and then you can sell it for profit. But it's our rules are very strict about our wild fisheries. who can sell it, who can make profit from it. So you have to be licensed correctly to be able to use even the fish waste. So I buy from the processing plants, and you're right, it's tricky to get their agreement or to work with you. I mean, because they do have their way of doing things. And so you have to convince them that it's worth their time to sell you their skins. They have to then save it a certain way. Normally it's just falling into the ground and they grind it up right underneath the skinning machine. But now I'm having them, put that off into a different thing. It's going into a tote, and then they're taking that and putting it in 10-pound fish bags, and then flash freezing it for me, then putting it in fish boxes, and then keeping it and then shipping it to me. So it's a huge hassle for them. But, my goal is to convince even these giant processing plants that saving the fish waste is important. It doesn't just make you feel good. It's the right thing to do. I mean, there's so much waste. There is a market for this. And that's why I keep talking about, just in America, how much, just in the dog treat industry, how much Americans are willing to spend on dog treats. And we're sick of getting things for our pets that we don't know what's in the bag. I mean, you look at the ingredients on something and it's just endless amount of stuff. I mean, it's just like, what is that? Where our dog treats, it's just fish skin. It's just halibut or just salmon or just cod. And in that skin are all these tons of vitamins. So my problem is getting a bigger space to hold more fish at once, because the shipping, the logistics in Alaska are huge. We're enormous, right? Our state is a third of the size of the rest of the United States. So it's just massive. And just moving things around the state is huge. So even though a place might be fairly close to me, like 60 miles, there's no road. So I have to, get it on a barge and ship it all the way around the coast of Alaska to get to me. And it's just, the cost is so much. So if I can eliminate a lot of those movements, the transportation costs, and just get one large shipment, throw it in my freezer, pay for it one time, that would be great. So for me, it's just more freezer space. And then obviously more dehydrators that dehydrate faster. I mean, I do have big, large industrial dehydrators, but maybe I need to get more, but also labor cost. It's all very labor intensive. So those are my things. It's a very much a gourmet boutique kind of treat that's very labor intensive. So we care very much about every treat coming out. There's no machine that can take over what the human hand is doing. So those costs are high. That's kind of my limitation, but there's no limitation in the supply. I mean, I've got supply. It's the other stuff that.
Yeah. Tessa, we are asked, in what form can you receive the leather? Is it okay if it's frozen, or, does it have to be brand new, frozen then, or fresh? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I've been getting it frozen. It is possible to dry it as an alternative, but I've been working with it frozen. The trick is that it needs to be frozen bright and fresh, because leather is something where you're preserving it. So rot is the enemy of good leather. So once it comes off the fish, it needs to be refrozen pretty much immediately. So that's one of the issues there.
Yes, it's been
I buy big tote boxes of fish skin frozen from fish processors.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, is it the same with you as Tasha is mentioning, that the small fisheries tend to be better with helping you out, or do you have a similar story to tell there? Have you tried some of the big ones?
Unfortunately, most of the small processing plants have gone out of business in Alaska, and so we are left with giant, large processing plants. I have been able to, I think, just because of my longevity in the fishing industry, I have made relationships, and they kind of know me and trust me. And at first it was just about, doing me a favor, like, what, okay, Sarah wants to try this, we'll do this. And now I'm a consistent buyer, so now they just hold it for me. I mean, so I have been able to develop relationships with processing plants who just immediately put aside for me this when they're skinning. They know I'm going to buy it at some point. So they've been very gracious and generous in holding that fish for me, because I can't keep it all at once. So, but definitely, you know, fresh, because it's food safety is priority for me. I can't have it be laying out. I mean, fish rots quickly. And so you want it not to make anyone sick. And so the FDA has stepped in now and controls all of our pet food industry here in America. And so the food safety is very important. And so it needs to be, you know, frozen fresh immediately when it comes off the skin, off the fish.
That's interesting to hear about the processors in Alaska, because a lot of BC fish actually goes up to Alaska, because here it isn't that they've consolidated into large processors so much. I mean, there's some of that, but a lot of it is just moved to Alaska because Alaska continues to invest in fish processing, where British Columbia has not looked as much at it. And then with working with large processors, one anecdote I can tell is one particular processor that I was really keen to work with, and I just kept calling them and bugging them and trying to make the case for why they really should do this. And I won't name them, but they finally said, sure, we'll sell you 50 pounds of tuna skin to practice on. And so I purchased it, and not only had it been hacked up into tiny little pieces, I mean, it looked like the end of a murder scene, but it was completely rotten. Like when I thawed it and opened up the box, it was just like, ugh. And I figured it was his way of saying, lady, just leave me alone. So yeah. I haven't contacted them since.
Keep up your good work. I think this is exactly the same story as we had in Iceland, actually in the 50s and 60s, when some of the entrepreneurs were starting to collect what was defined as waste then. And there was not that much of an understanding, but the stories are kind of in line with what you're saying. It changes, of course. It takes time to build the trust between the fisheries and you guys. So I think we shouldn't. I feel, of course, you're not giving up, but this is what's so tough. One thing that has happened here in Europe, Norway, and actually I'm learning from New Zealand even as well, is that the price of fish skin is actually increasing. Mm-hmm. Are you mostly getting it free, Sarah, or are you no? No way.
I wish it was. I mean, it was, you know, they're dumping it normally.
Yeah.
But the hassle of collecting it for me and flash freezing it and packing it and the boxing and their labor, I pay for. So it's certainly not a free product. You think it should be, but because they have to store it a certain way and collect it a certain way and, you know, keep it for me, I pay for that. But that still isn't my largest expense. I mean, it's the shipping, getting it to me, or even driving to the ones, you know, but no, it's certainly not free. Oh. But, you know, in Alaska, it's interesting, the mentality. So, you know, Alaska is so backward in a lot of things. I mean, I love Alaska. I do. But our mentality of thinking anything outside of oil and gas is just to focus their attention on any alternative form of energy or anything new is really hard. And to get anyone's attention and say, hey, this could be a really brand new industry for the state of Alaska. I mean, it's not just me, but I see the potential of using waste to fish. We have so much, and saying, you know, Alaska is hurting right now, you know, economically. We need new money coming into our state. We need it so desperately, but our politicians and our leaders are unwilling to look at anything else new. And when I'm constantly push, it's like that patronizing, like pat on my shoulder and like, hey lady, we got it. Go back to sewing, quilting, or whatever, you know, we will take care of this. And so I'm just like doing my own thing and going, okay, well, fine, whatever. Meanwhile, I'm growing Alaskans because there's not a lot of interest. Like Iceland is so open to all these new ideas, right? And what you've done, I know, has taken a lot of time to push and change that mentality. And, you know, Alaska Ocean Cluster, I didn't get to know you, Thor, or I don't really know you, but know of you through the Alaskan Ocean Cluster. And then going, oh my God, Iceland's been doing this for years. I want to go to Iceland and I want to see what you're doing. And it's very inspiring because it's what I've naturally wanted to do growing up, you know. But But my enthusiasm and my passion for it, I'm trying to share with others. And I think it is catching on, certainly with dog owners and certainly with My Alaskans dog treats. But it's not just me. I mean, think about the amount of money that's out there, potential for the state of Alaska. We export 3 billion pounds of seafood every year. Where's all that waste going? We could use it for all these other things. There's a very tiny, tiny group of people who are interested in that. And hopefully Alaska will catch on, but it's tough to get people's attention. So I'm very busy every day in my business. And I just go, well, hopefully people will at least see what I'm doing and buy dog treats, because I really need them to buy dog treats. So
Kasia, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how similar it is, the situation in British Columbia. In British Columbia, it's all tech. And when you say that you're actually looking at doing manufacturing and working with an actual physical property, it like people can't even understand, because everything's an app or at best robotics, but there's just no thought to do anything physical. And government programs, I notice in the question and answer, lots of people are saying, oh, how do you make that fish leather? And I will say that in fish leather, in leather tanning in general, it's trade secrets, not IP, intellectual property. Because if you were to take out a patent, you'd have to publish your recipe, and then other tanners could just make enough changes that they could use it. So you have to work with trade secrets. And the Canadian government is very interested in IP. And that's the first question for anything that has any government funding attached to it is, what's your IP? And if you say trade secret, they're just not interested. Because they're not interested in actually producing the stuff in Canada. What they want is to buy and sell patents like you do stocks, and then actually send the real production down to North Carolina or some other place that does production, because Canada just doesn't make things anymore. So again, it's this really hard sell of saying, we have things here, and a production model based on where is the waste actually happening. Let's do micro production close to where the waste is happening. And then replicate elsewhere where there is, I mean, one of the things that we say at 7 Leagues is wherever there is fish processing and the right kind of market, we're looking to have another 7 Leagues leather. Our goal is definitely replication, but we don't want to have one huge facility where people are flying fish skin to us, because that's just not environmentally responsible. What we want is that replication. And we're looking at a model based on like microbreweries, where we make it public, we make it urban, we make it exciting. We then, because of that, and this starts to answer someone else's question of how do you get people to understand fish leather and be interested, is if we're doing it in an urban public way, with a visible and visitable micro tannery, they can come see what we're doing. Then we're taking transparency literally. And so we're able to say, yes, we have a very environmentally sound process. We're not going to tell you the exact ingredients or what proportions they are, because that goes back to the trade secrets. But you can see what we're doing. You can see how we're being responsible about it. And then you get to touch and feel and see the actual product, which as soon as you put it in someone's hands, they're super excited. When you say the word fish leather, they're kind of ew, but when you put it in someone's hands, they're So that's part of our model, is to make it really, really public and get it out there. But again, it's super, like, on the government side, even other institutions, investment vehicles, we don't make leather here, so there's no understanding of it. And in fact, we don't make that many things in Canada. And so manufacturing is something that's a really hard sell.
I must tell you that in Iceland, there was this amazing ambassador, US ambassador, some years ago, Rob Barber. And he took a tie, Icelandic cod leather tie, and gave it to President Obama. And I know that Michelle actually thought there would be this awful smell, but then they realized there was absolutely no smell. But I think we will see this happen. There will be more and more. The questions, there are actually massive amounts of questions coming up, guys. So I'm wondering if we can be really kind of short with the answers. one question is, what's the biggest challenge in social communication to sell fish leather products? And related to that, the price. Why is it so expensive? Maybe Kasia.
Sure. So I started to touch on that in terms of people need to see it and feel it and touch it to get more excited about it. They find out that it's strong. The first two questions are always, does it smell? And then they smell it and they go, oh, it smells like leather. And I say, well, that's because it's leather. Basically, the stuff that would make a smell is the stuff that would rot. And the act of tanning is getting rid of anything that would rot and preserving it so that there isn't a smell. And then it's super strong. Once we get past those two questions, then they're interested. It's expensive in part, some of the stuff that Sarah was talking about and I was talking about. You have to get, you have to buy it. You have to have the processors take it off and treat it carefully, refreeze it quickly, things like that. So there is some cost with that. The biggest cost really with fish leather is that it's you're going to have to piece it if you're making anything large. So you can make sheets. I mean, it's basically a triangle. So if you counterpoint the triangles, we can sew them or glue them into sheets and sell them in sheets, or people can buy them and they can piece them. But I know, like when I made my proof of concept first pair of shoes, it actually took me 9 different pieces of fish skin. I mean, this was my first time through, so it's quite possible that as we, get further into that project, but this was a proof of concept, and then lots of sewing. And of course, labor is always your highest cost. So depending on what you're making, it can be a little more costly. But it's the beauty factor, right? That it is absolutely gorgeous. It's also in the realm of exotic leathers. Like most leather in the world is a byproduct of food processing. All the cow leather, the goat leather, the pig leather, all of that is simply soaking up waste from food processing. But exotic leathers like snake and stuff like that, those are animals killed for their skins. They're the only ones in the leather industry that are killed for their skins. And this gives an alternative that is a waste product from food. So it's a much more ethical alternative. I don't know if that answers.
It's a good answer. I was just the same. There was actually a question about how many skills did you need for one handbag, and I think you probably answered that quite well. From your end, Sarah, the question here is for pet food from fish skin. Is there any certification process we need to follow?
Well, it depends on where you're at. In the United States, in Alaska, we have, how we purchase it, how we sell it. There's laws for that. In the America, it's the United States, it's the FDA that controls that. So it's really where you're located. There's going to be laws and things that you need to follow, depending where you're at.
Alexandra, you're getting a question here about how do you extract collagen from fish skin?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I will say that I'm not a biochemist, but essentially collagen is a protein. So it's a folded structure that's within the skin. So there is a process of soaking the skins in both water of differing pH that essentially releases that protein from the skin and then starts to unfold it. And then if you continue this process, that it's actually unfolding so much that, and then what you get is the gelatin from the fish skin. So you would have to talk to a biochemist to get the real specifics on that, but it's not a high-tech process. It actually can be done in a very low-tech way, but it's a good way to deal with the skin.
Brilliant, good answer. I was just wondering, I want to end on some positive notes, not only seeing your amazing stories, but are there any fisheries, small fishermen that you think have inspired you or are really helping out? That's how my cluster started, I think, is that I found these fisheries, some of them, that were just absolutely enthusiastic to do something. And that's so important. Any stories from your side that you want to share?
Family-owned fish processors, I find much, much easier to work with than corporate-owned. They seem to have their heart more in the idea of making the best of the whole sector. And so those have been the ones that are the quickest to collaborate and to be supportive. And I know we've got several that are really, really helpful, and I wouldn't have gotten the foot in the door without them. I'm hoping that once we're up and running and producing, and we can demonstrate that this is a viable option, that some of the larger ones will either be embarrassed into joining us, or will be pushed by policy. But it is the smaller ones who are more nimble, so we rely very much on those businesses.
Sarah?
I think the commercial fishing families themselves really understand the wonder of our Alaska fishing industry. And I think they're all excited to see our fish expand into different ways. I mean, it's just really families catching this fish, and to see it exported all over the world is really inspiring for us here in Alaska. And to see our fish used in other ways is only a bonus. So I think the families of Alaska commercial fishermen itself are inspiring to me.
Great to hear. I've got a question here about the yield of extracting collagen. We think it's around 10% of the skin that will be made into collagen. I was actually talking to American Seafood the other day, and they were telling me that they do 300,000 metric tons of Alaskan pollock. That would be 9,000 metric tons of fish skin. They're actually doing quite well with fish meal right now. But 9,000 metric tons would be like 9 million kilos of collagen of the fish skin, which means that we can do probably quite a lot of collagen from it. We were estimating that we might be around $15 to $18 million worth of collagen just from the Alaskan pollock. And this just shows us what we can do. Can you imagine what we could do if we could do leather from it as well? And we need to work with these large companies as well to just show them the opportunities with increasing more value from the side streams. Keep in mind, American Seafood is a good example of a company that's though utilizing everything into fish meal, which I think is a good and respected way of doing things. We have to wrap up now, guys. I am really pleased with having you on board. I think your message is crucial for us, and I think it's actually coming. It comes slowly but steadily. Any final thoughts before we leave the audience?
Can I maybe just make one last comment? I know there's a question asking what are they doing in the UK similarly. We're actually working quite closely at the moment with Grimsby and the Lincolnshire region, where there's a lot of interest in doing this with haddock and other fish species. There's a lot of fish meal production there, and there's also companies like Sea Chips that are making snack crisps from the salmon skin, for example. So just to answer that question.
Good. Any final thoughts? Any bright future?
I think Iceland needs to come visit Alaska, or bring Air Alaska over to you, and more of us, so they can be inspired.
We look forward to a bright future where we have 7 leagues, micro tanneries all up and down this coast, as well as other places wherever there is that fish processing in the market, whether it's Hawaii, whether it's St. Lucia, where I do work as well, whether it's here. I'm looking forward to bringing this micro tannery model to that includes the social inclusion as well as the environmental inclusion all over. So look out, we're coming.
Absolutely brilliant. We have your emails and your websites already sent to the people here, so they can be in touch. I challenge all of the audience to make sure that you get the newsletters. Once again, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you here, talking about this specific but very important part of the fish that is creating so much excitement in our parts of the world. And it can definitely be in yours as well. Look forward to collaborating with you all. And thank you both for amazing speech with you, Alexandra, on my side as well, and the cod behind here. So thank you all and goodbye.
Thank you.